why your talent acquisition or HR staff might not be up for the task.
Trust that's built in the marketplace will always yield a better result. The right strategic recruiter is expensive. Someone that is cheaper, less expensive, is going to attract a less expensive person. Being able to assess in the details, not just surface level, what you really need for your organization to increase your ROI, to make your life easier. That's a differentiator I bring.
We'll talk about how we move from attract to engage, but here, yeah, how and when to engage a strategic recruiter. Start with the first point. You know, this is a quote from you, which is a quote from your clients. You're not like every other recruiter. And that's interesting. So tell me about that. What does that mean? How you're different and why that's important in the process?
You know, why I may differentiate from the average recruiter is because I'm taking more of a strategic approach, not just filling a role or accumulating bodies or resumes for this role. Thinking through the leadership style of the company, the hiring company, super, super important. Making sure that there's cultural alignment and digging into more of their motivations, their aspirations versus just the technical skill set. If you want someone to stay very, very long term in your organization, you want to retain them for many years. The technical, of course, works at first, but then there has to be a deeper connection with this person on whether it's values, whether it's they align with the vision of your company. There has to be something more that helps them remain in your organization. And it cannot just be surface level technical. It has to be a little bit deeper. And that's what we focus on, what I focus on. So definitely being more strategic. Sometimes a client might approach me and say, hey, we have this open role. And I have to assess, is it really the role that they need to hire for?
Okay.
So sometimes it's being more strategic in that manner. Is this the right role? Let me learn more about how your accounting and finance team is operating right now. Not operating 2 years ago when I helped you with another role, but operating right now. And let's assess that this is accurate, that what you're telling me you need is accurate.
Okay, so you mean you're saying they might come to you, they have an open role, and it might even be true that that's not the role they need to fill.
There could be a gap in how they're thinking through their team structure and what is most important to their team dynamic.
Can you be more specific or give an example?
Yes. Sometimes in an accounting function, you might need a piece called a controller. That kind of brings everything together and has the ability to work cross-functionally across multiple business units, multiple teams, multiple service lines, for example. And sometimes an organization thinks they need this person, but sometimes they need a whole transformation to occur in their finance department versus just this piece. They need to transform certain processes first to make sure this piece actually fits in versus this piece coming in and expecting it to just magically fix everything.
Okay.
Finance transformation is a huge, huge topic now, and being more widely accepted that finance organizations need to start leveraging automation, need to start leveraging more innovation in their finance. So that way they can be more strategic. But if they're just thinking through, let me fill this role to mask everything, it won't work. So I sometimes say, I'm not sure that you need this role, but let me tell you what you could possibly need and then go from there. I might even introduce someone I actually work with, one of my clients, who's very well known for finance transformation. So sometimes it's not an open role, and that's just being upfront and honest.
Okay.
And the differentiator is being able to assess in the details, not just surface level, what you really need for your organization to increase your ROI, to make your life easier. That's a differentiator I bring.
Okay. how would you do this analysis where they say, hey, we need a controller, and then you say, what would, I mean, we don't have to go into too much detail, but it would be interesting to know how you do
Mhm.
more than the typical recruiter, where you kind of look under the hood and see how their department operates.
I
So,
like,
I mean,
yes, yes.
how do you actually do that? Give me the short version of how you would.
Yes, short version, David, great question. Definitely have to look under the hood. In order to look under the hood, though, you have to have seen a few hoods. And so being in the corporate world, being on the public accounting side, having seen the under the hood, how things operate at successful companies versus not successful, that's where I bring the best practices because I've seen great companies do things in an amazing, efficient way. And then I've seen companies struggle time after time, making the same mistakes. So it's definitely seeing a lot and being able to bring that to the table
Okay.
versus only seeing one company for my whole entire career. That's not going to
Yeah.
help me position a client's finance and accounting team to my best ability. It's seeing a lot under the hood, like you just said, and that's a great metaphor too. You know, you go, like you said, like you go quick, like you go to a mechanic. Okay, this mechanic has only worked on Fords. Okay, well, I'm
Hmm.
bringing my Maserati. I don't feel comfortable if they've never looked under the hood of a Maserati multiple times to be
Right.
able to give me a great service.
So you had the chance of seeing up close how a lot of different companies operate. Is that from your work as a, like a recruitment specialist and business owner, or you mean from your kind of past life, in
Both.
finance? Okay.
Yeah, great question. Both on the corporate side. When I first started
Okay.
my career, I was in client service
Okay.
and I was examining the accounting and finance controls, how they operate as an organization. That's a really good piece. So I started my career examining how companies operate on the audit side. I'm auditing their processes, their controls, how they're doing things. What are the gaps? Where could things go wrong?
Uh-huh.
So it started with that foundational knowledge within public accounting. That's a really, really good question. Should be incorporated to build more trust too. And then moving on to the corporate world. Okay, I saw different corporate organizations, how their finance and accounting teams, I'm part of their team now. I see how they're functioning. I see the inefficiencies. I'm bringing these best practices to the table, process improvements. I'm conducting and
Hmm.
executing process improvement work for corporations as well, from Fortune 500 to the mid market. And then within recruiting, of course, hearing other CEOs, CFOs, VPs of finance speak to me about their processes and their team structure. Was able to kind of bring that experience that I had when I was executing to now the other side in recruitment. And that's another reason why I differentiate from others because I've seen under the hood so many times. And I know it's really, really important for these leaders to know some best practices and be able to evaluate what they really, really need. I'm going to say it how it is. If I disagree in a soft manner, I'm going to tell my client. For the most part, they have respected it. They've known me for so many years now. They know I have good intentions when I am being very, very direct. So if someone's reading this book and they like that type of person to help
Uh-huh.
them, that is me as a strategic recruiter. I am not going to sugarcoat things and I'll be proactive with best practices and other items.
I'd love to get an example of you telling kind of like telling a client the difficult thing that they need to hear,
Mm,
giving them that kind of hard news, or like telling them straight, or it can be like, we really need to hire two new accountants, and Rita
mm,
says, no, that's absolutely not what you need. Your processes are broken. Your
mhm,
company's a mess. I mean, we don't want to go that far, but
mhm.
something like that. If you can relate a story when that illustrates that whole like tell it like it is, give it to them straight, gloves off approach. If you can think of something like that.
Yes. One private equity backed company came to me and wanted to hire a VP of finance, strategic VP of finance. And instead of just, okay, here's the role, the job descriptions. I'm just asking questions. How is this person going to collaborate with other team members and understanding the details more? Because bringing in a VP of finance first, sometimes they want to be hands off. They don't even want to be in the details. Very, very important.
Okay.
And what the CFO wanted was someone in those details and not being as high level at first. So when I heard this, I just mentioned, hey, typically when I see someone at this level, they can be in the details, but now they've progressed to being a little bit more strategic. They're
Okay.
overseeing more people. They're not as in the details anymore. So my recommendation after learning more was to bring in someone at a managerial level who's high performing, not just an average, who can have a shorter learning curve to be in all of the details and give them the opportunity to progress to VP. So going back to when we were talking about law of attraction, the growth, they want the growth, they're inspired by that. So long story short, she does end up hiring a finance manager who's high performing, wants to get to the next level quicker, and is willing to do whatever it takes to do so. So this was it was a huge success story because initially wanted this level, which is more expensive. So higher salary expense on the financials. Now she has someone coming in fully motivated, loyal more to her because she's providing this great opportunity to be fast tracked. So things worked out really, really, really well for this finance manager that ended up coming into the organization versus, again, hiring someone at a VP level and then it not working out. I've seen times where the person is demotivated because there's no alignment between responsibilities and level. And so you're losing money just from that bad hire. And now losing your time and energy and mental health because you have to train this person. So it's a loss, like a complete loss. So definitely the level.
This is a big one. Why your talent acquisition or HR staff might not be up for the task.
In general, in business, there's a misconception that if someone is in a role, that they automatically know what they are doing, especially with HR and talent acquisition. Most of the time, they are not experts at handling high performers in the recruitment process. It's not something that's kind of taught in school or in just one company. We don't ever get trained, okay, how do you communicate with this type of person? But if someone comes in and has been communicating with high performers for many years, knows them in and out, that will help your whole recruiting process be more successful. So that inherently there's a cap on a few things. Even if you feel the HR and talent acquisition team members are great and they have the background, the technical skill set. So inherently there's a cap. They're capped at as to their technical knowledge related to the field. They're capped at the relationships in the marketplace, their relationships that they've built in the marketplace, that's capped. They are not in the know. There's no specialization most of the time. They're capped at the rapport and trust they're able to build with a high performer. Again, it's not taught in school. It's not taught in a company to know how to communicate with high performers and build that rapport. Very, very important. They're capped at their influence. High performers are influenced by the right people, and that isn't your HR or talent acquisition team members, because automatically there's a bias because they are part of your organization. So the influence level from them is capped. The attraction is going to be capped. I'm seeing the influence for them to really get this high performer so excited and attracted is inherently capped because they're part of the hiring company. So there's a bias in the high performer's mind that says, okay, of course you're going to say great things about this company. You're part of the company. That's what I'm referring to. Versus I work with multiple companies. I work with multiple clients. I could present this great candidate multiple opportunities. I'm not part of this environment, although of course I'm getting paid by the client. My influence is greater because of that.
Right. So just to play devil's advocate,
yes,
if you're being paid by the recruiting company, then your interest is kind of with them. How would you address that objection that, oh, well, she's working for the company, so even though she's
Mhm.
not an employee of them, she's still gonna talk them up and blah blah blah.
Yes, that's a great question. The way I've positioned myself in the marketplace is I don't take on every client.
Okay.
I only take on clients that I can truly advocate for, that I feel has that growth, that great growth opportunity that they're looking for too. So if they were to speak to another professional in their network and ask, I have that reputation now,
Yeah.
that I'm not just poaching them about any opportunity. I named my company Selective Insight for a reason. Selective with the clients that we advocate for, selective with the professionals that we introduce. And that means a lot. Like that word be select, very selective with who we are being advocates for.
Yeah. So, right, like I would imagine, all right, like maybe in the short term, it would benefit you to talk up a client company and even like push hard for recruitment for a
Mhm.
company for a person who's not a good fit. In the short term, sure, then you get paid, but in the long term, it would affect your brand and your reputation because people would start to realize like, yeah, she's
Mhm.
just telling people what they want to know instead of being honest. That's the sense I get.
Yes, exactly.
Versus an
Exactly.
employee of a company, they're yeah, they if they do that, they don't really have a brand to represent because
Mhm.
they're just the employee.
So we talked about growth mindset, fixed mindset.
Right.
A lot of the times, a fixed mindset in the process of recruiting and hiring, where ticking off boxes is what's occurring. And when you're ticking off boxes on a resume, just aligning, okay, this is what we need, keywords, that's not the right approach. High performers are overlooked if you're just ticking off the boxes.
Yeah.
If you cannot assess beyond the technical skill set, which again, typically is not being done, being in the industry now for a while on both sides, internal, external hiring. There's no assessment done most of the time on the leadership qualities, the intangibles, even assessing track record of success. All of that is thrown out the window. And we're
Okay.
just looking at these keywords on a resume, keywords on a job description, and
Uh-huh.
not seeing this beautiful gray area of talent that can transform your whole
Yeah.
team and increase your ROI. So inherently fixed mindset in the process. But like in sports, for example,
Uh-huh.
in order to be a five-star player, like an all-star player, you have to have the stats, but you also have to have feel for the game. That's what makes you
Right.
an all-star.
Right.
Where the feel is lacking within the majority of internal resources within HR and talent acquisition. The strong instinct also, you know, in sports, a player has to have a very strong instinct in order to be an all-star. They have to have a strong gut feeling. This doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes within their DNA, okay, they have a better instinct, but
Right.
it's not all about looking good on paper and the stats. It's about the feel for the game, the feel for, is this person a high performer? Can I sense that quickly? That instinct, not everybody has.
Have you seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I've seen, but would have to recall some of it.
Yeah, but you remember as Brad Pitt plays he plays the baseball scout and he hires like some kid out of Harvard and it's all about like the old school way of like scouting players based on like look and feel versus like the new data driven way.
Yes, yes,
And that's a great
yes.
movie. I never
I
thought of
like
that as
that.
a recruitment movie,
I like
but
that.
it's basically it's recruitment. It's your field, just baseball.
I
But
like that. I like that.
I don't know if it's relevant for the book, but
I do, because there's a connection though, because
yeah,
the fixed mindset is looking at just stats.
in some ways the movie was making the opposite point because I
Okay.
think they were trying to show that like oh like the old school way of intangibles doesn't work. What
Mm.
really counts is the hard data, which is I mean that might make sense in baseball. But anyway, there's probably something there's probably a analogy worth making. So
There was another movie with Adam Sandler that came out on the recruiting side. I think
oh
LeBron
okay.
James was behind it. He produced it, I believe.
Oh
I watched that. The scout had a feel for someone. No one was feeling it. No one. was looking at this player. That could be a better one to say, hey, like no one was looking because they're just paying
Yeah.
attention to the stats, where he saw this athlete's potential, this player, basketball player's potential. And that's maybe why I differentiate from others, is because I have an instinct to see potential. I've
Okay.
proven it time after time now that I can confidently say that. Something, when I speak to someone, I'm like, wow, they remind me of this person. They remind me of this. I think they would develop to be this.
Yeah.
I've even felt that in the corporate world. I sensed someone was at the highest level. They weren't. They were a step below. Guess what? 2 years later, they're at that level. I sensed
Okay.
something. I was like, oh, they're a partner, right? No, they're a senior manager. I was like, really? Okay. They were, the way they operated, I felt they were at that level. And it made me sense that that's where they're going to be.
Please get really specific. Like, what indicated to you that they were this kind of diamond in the rough? I know, and part of it is just
Yes.
gut feeling, but if you can give some specifics about like who they were, what they were good at,
The way they communicated, their presence, their professionalism,
were they really articulate? Did they have a certain charisma?
their physical presence, you felt something was different about this person. The way they interacted with different levels in the organization, they could build connection quickly.
Okay. What was this person's role exactly, or their title?
The first person that came to me, it was just, I think they were a senior manager in a
Okay.
big four firm.
What if I said, if I'm the CEO, and what if I said, all right, I'm going to teach my talent acquisition people how to recruit based on a growth mindset. I don't need an external recruiter. What would you say to that?
Oof, that will get deep because it depends on the person you're training. Who
Okay.
are they as a person first?
Well,
Because the growth mindset, not everybody can even have. I think, just maybe emphasizing the actual connection that's being built with the high performer, with this rock star. What type of connection is being built? Stronger connection, stronger likelihood, higher likelihood that things are going to work out. So what type of connection? I think it comes down to that. Why I've been successful is connecting at a higher level than just surface, deeper connection.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. So let's go to the next point. And outline stories of clients that engaged the wrong recruiter and the damage that was done.
Yes. So engaging the wrong recruiter. Initially, you might not know. Obviously, it's the wrong recruiter,
Uh-huh.
but the damage can last for many years. And I've seen this actually happen with one of my
Okay.
clients. I'm not going to mention the client name though.
Can you talk about like the industry that they're in and the kind of company
Management
they're?
consulting. Yes.
Okay.
Within management consulting. And just wanted to bring up like quick points before going to the story. A lot of things that I've heard many times that where you engage the wrong recruiter from clients that I take on that have had horrible experiences. They mention volume, there's a volume of candidates, volume of resumes, but no quality. They're
Okay.
misrepresenting their brand. They're wasting a lot of time and energy. They're lying, which I consider fraud. There's also pressure tactics. There's a bad rep in the recruitment world, and lying is one of them.
What are they lying about? What though?
Just lying about someone's credentials, lying about what the person said, lying about an expectation, just lie after lie after lie, just
Sorry,
to
so
make the money,
who's
just to get the fee, placement fee.
so the recruiter is doing the lying.
Falsifying,
Okay.
lying, just not being honest. Let's just say dishonesty is a
Okay.
thing in the recruiting world,
Got it.
unfortunately. A lot of recruiters are unethical,
Okay.
and we all know, and leaders in the industry know this too. And that's why it's really important to have the right recruiter.
This is a
And
very
there could be even pressure tactics being used by this wrong recruiter towards the candidate, who could be this great rock star, repelling them from even having a conversation with your organization because of their pressure tactics. Bullying, making high performers sometimes even cry, I've heard, and this is going to be a story. I know it sounds crazy. That's it. I was shocked too. I had no idea that this used to happen. All right, so one story. When I first started working with one of the first clients I landed, I quickly realized when I was speaking to great professionals in the marketplace, There was a huge messaging issue, and multiple external recruiters, the wrong recruiters, were involved in attracting great high performers to this organization. But they were derailing this company's brand. They were not being strategic. They were very low level, surface level recruiters. Now, were they producing volume? Sure. Did 1 out of 100 get hired? Sure. One is better than none, right? But guess what? Your reputation got destroyed. And then it takes years to rebuild, in which is what I saw. And this company was amazing. Great growth opportunities, great people, great strategies, wrong advocates that interrupted their whole brand and what they were building. So the low-level recruiter now is talking to a high performer. Now the high performer thinks this low-level recruiter is working with a low-level hiring company. Let's bring it back to law of attraction. That's what happens. Low-level recruiter talking to a high performer, the high performer automatically thinks there's no way you are recruiting for a great company. There's no way in hell. And that's what could happen. There was a lack of alignment on values and what this organization was about.
Yeah.
And then when I mentioned it to my client, do you know this is what they're saying about your company? It was like, we knew a little bit, but they were in shock that it was to the extent. Staffing is not known to be strategic. It's bodies. You guys just have bodies. That's in other terms. And they didn't just have bodies. They had high-performing professionals in their organization that are amazing.
You mentioned a huge messaging issue. Specifically, what does that mean?
The messaging was they're not articulating the company in the right manner. They're just saying, this is a staffing firm. That's not the right messaging to have in the marketplace about your brands. That's great. There's misalignment with how they're articulating the company and the opportunity.
So what was the outcome of this? Like you mentioned that.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The outcome is they decided to cut a lot of recruiters. They took action. Now, this didn't happen overnight, but when I raised awareness, I believe it did influence them to take that action and continuously take it. Because now I'm coming in with my company and I'm the polar opposite of these people, the wrong recruiters. I'm the polar opposite. So when they see this, they're like, oh my God, is this what it's really like to work with a recruiter? They had a shift. Just a quick one. But I was once helping a great senior accounting manager who came from one of the big 4 firms, Ernst & Young, EY. She ended up getting an offer from one of my clients and then getting an offer from another company in which she was working with another external recruiter for the other company. And so she's assessing both offers. She's a young mom. Her husband is overseas working. And I connected with her because our daughters are around the same age, if you want to put a little bit more context. So
yeah, that's always good.
You could trust me a little bit. We're talking about our daughters and I'm helping her with the opportunity. But now she has to make a really important decision. And she actually likes both of these companies. One company, the other company, not with my client, is offering her a little bit more money. So she's looking at that, of course. And I wanted to make sure that she made the right decision regardless, to be truthful. As a young mom, as a mom in general, I would hate someone to be unhappy with their decision for their own family. So I approached it with that versus this other recruiter basically made her, this is a true story, made her cry because at the end, she decided to take the offer with my client, made her cry that why wouldn't she take more money? Let's get back to what's most important to her though, as a high performer, having flexibility for her chat with her daughter, being able to take her back and forth to daycare. That was not going to be available at the other company that was offering her more money. When I remembered this as a mom, I need that too. We're talking about that more now in the offer stage. Okay, let's get back to forget about the money aspect. You can always make that. You can always make it back somehow, somewhere. But is that going to hurt your mental health, not being able to pick up your daughter on time, not being able to do this, and digging deeper, connecting with her that level? And she's like, oh my God, yeah, this is the most important to me. Like, how am I forgetting? It's just not about that. This other recruiter made her cry, and she called me crying about it too.
Okay. And why did she how did,
It's a form of bullying in the
yeah,
process,
okay,
in
bullying this.
which that is a huge, huge issue with the wrong recruiter. Bullying and only thinking about the money versus,
Right.
is this person going to be happy? To me, if that person's not happy, guess what?
Okay.
I'm going to get someone else that will be happy in the role. I don't care. But I'm not going to make that person suffer to accept this offer.
Uh-huh.
That's not my intention, and that's not what I want to do. That's not my
Okay.
part of my mission, purpose. The association with an evil person, almost like an evil recruiter, that can happen.
Okay.
That's basically the point of the story. There are those recruiters that don't take a human being into consideration, and you don't want that
Yeah.
part of your association.
We talked about this a little already, the pros and cons of hiring someone outside your organization.
Yes. So some of the pros of working with someone outside of your organization, trust that's built in the marketplace will always yield a better result. So if you've had
Okay.
trust in the marketplace for 15 plus years, diverse marketplace, not just one company or two companies that you recruited for, that works very, very well. Access to talent through long-term trusting relationships. When you use someone outside of your organization, leveraging the right strategic recruiting partner, you have a better pulse on the marketplace. Someone's in the day-to-day outside of your organization, doesn't have the bias, they're going to have a better pulse. It's going to help your company stand out from the competition. So if your company's only using internal recruiters, your talent acquisition team, they're still successful. But
Uh-huh.
another company has a nice balance. They use talent acquisition, internal, plus strategically selecting, let's say, one or two recruiters that they
Uh-huh.
know will get the results. Better likelihood of attracting talent that they've never even come across. It will be someone that is leveraging an outside resource, of course, that strategic recruiter. The big one that I feel like is the biggest pro is the influence. A high performer is influenced by the right person. If the person they're speaking to is not influential,
Uh-huh.
they again don't have that art of communication, it's going to be harder to be very successful with bringing on this high performer to your organization. Being influential as a strategic recruiter is a huge benefit to the organization and to my clients. And I see it, and sometimes they even mention it to me.
Okay.
Sometimes even the closing skills, like being able to have deeper conversations in the offer stage. When now they're looking at me as I can give them advice even outside of this company. That works in my client's favor as well. And just one quick one, a lot of the opportunities to save time and energy. Let's talk about mental health because no one talks about it at a high leadership level. A CEO's mental health, CFO's mental health is going to be in a better place if they have the right recruiter that understands their vision, their leadership style, and is able to attract only those that are in alignment with that. That's
Okay.
a huge pro. No frustration. I've heard this from my clients.
What are some cons?
The cons is, the biggest one, of course, is everyone's thinking of the ROI
Uh-huh.
and the financials and the expense piece. The right strategic recruiter is expensive, and they're expensive for a reason because they're delivering results consistently, not
Mm-hmm.
just for one role, two roles, not for just 1 year, 2 years,
Okay.
multiple years for a very long time. They've been consistent. Quality is more on the excellence side versus, let's say you hire someone for a fee of 15%, 10%,
Okay.
which I've heard before. And they're like, oh, that's great. It's so inexpensive. They're going to get me the right person. Okay, yeah. Then they hire someone. Then there's a red flag in the background check. Then there's items missing in the process. Then they hire them. They have to fire them within the first 3 months. That's exactly what happens. Because
Okay.
let's go back to the law of attraction. I want to keep bringing this back in. Someone that is cheaper, less expensive, is going to attract a less expensive person, lower. And if they're producing lower quality, that's what they're attracting, lower quality candidates.
Okay.
I've seen it time and time again. I've never seen someone that had an inexpensive fee that produced huge results. But bringing it back to the law of attraction would be great too.
Other cons besides the expense?
That's the major one that I had.
Would you argue that when there's someone within your own firm that there's, in fact, yeah, again, playing devil's advocate,
Yes.
might want to argue that using an internal recruiter in your own company versus external one, you have more trust because maybe you know them personally. Two, I think you could make the case that an internal person knows the company culture better than an external recruiter. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think some parts of it actually are accurate. They could know it better, but do they understand the alignment and know how to interact with this high performer? And are they able to attract? In order for recruitment to be of an excellent recruiter, an excellent strategic partner, is one that can communicate at the highest level. That's what I've
Okay.
learned now. If
All right.
they can't and they can't align, they can't figure out these gaps and treat it like an art form, because that's what it is. Human interaction is not just a one size fits all. You're not going to have the highest level of success within your recruitment if you don't treat it as such. And the majority might not. Not that they're not great people, but maybe they're just not capable. It's the capability. What are they capable of doing in the process that can really, really help the outcome, the results?